So this is the story of Ted Bundy. Now, this is the part that gets me. Imagine being a guy who is responsible for over 30 women's deaths on record, possibly more. Quite frankly, I think more. And the police, from early on in the investigation, they know your name, they have a sketch of you, and they know that distinctive brownish little Volkswagen Beetle that you drive.
Yeah.
You've been questioned before, and yet you were not arrested. And this proceeded on for 5 states. He started in Seattle, Washington, worked his way to freaking Salt Lake City, Utah, and then Florida, just leaving just a rage of murders. And people knew his name was Ted. People knew the murderer's name was Ted. They had a sketch about him. They even knew the color, like a brownish little Volkswagen Beetle. I'm sure that stood out. So ever since Ted Bundy was younger, there was no crazy thing that sets him up to be a serial killer. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the times you'll hear about people were assaulted by their parents or family members or school teachers, and then you're like, okay, this is a setup for a serial killer. The one thing that stood out to me was he was from like a middle class family. He wanted to be freaking rich. That was kind of his end game. He was either going to be an attorney. He was very clean cut, very polished. The one thing in his childhood that I'm like, oh, that's a little bit weird because everything else seemed normal. I mean, he wasn't like a popular person in high school. He didn't get along with some of the Boy Scouts, but he wasn't like bullied to the depths of hell and dragged back, you know? Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't like 13 Reasons Why. It was just kind of like a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. Couldn't fit in a little bit, but that's literally everybody. The one thing was that he didn't know his father. His father wasn't in the picture, and so when his mom was pregnant, she decided maybe she didn't want to keep the baby. But then her parents were like, okay, no, move back home, keep the baby. So he grew up thinking that his grandparents were his parents and that his mom was his sister.
What?
Because they raised him like their son because she was younger.
That's crazy.
So, like, that was the one thing that I was like, oh, that's different for sure. Like, that's not like oh, you know. Like, how would you feel, though? I don't know if I would feel... I mean, obviously, I think it's emotional, but I don't think that would lead me on a serial rampage.
I would... See, if I grew up like that, if I didn't know, then I didn't know. But what I would think is weird is for the mom. Mm. The mom has to act like that's her brother instead of her son. That's crazy to me. Mm-hmm. So you think it's harder on the mom than it is him? Yeah. Don't you think? Mm-hmm.
That's true. Could you imagine if, like, you were your sister's dad?
Oh, my God.
Right? I was thinking about that. Like, what if my sister was my mom? Yeah, and my sister, like, literally acts like my mom.
Should you just test it out? Just call, like, Oma?
Oma? They both go, yeah. I'm like, there's another voice in the closet goes, yeah, too. I always gotta take it there. That's the one weird thing. He grew up to be really smart, really articulate, really charming. Like, even when you watch him, like, in court, like, throwing a rampage, you're kind of like, oh, he's kind of passionate. Like, instead of thinking, like, oh my God, this guy's a serial killer, you're kind of like, wow, he's really passionate about what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So it rubbed me the wrong way because I felt ashamed of myself. He went to University of Washington. He was admitted to undergrad there. And that's where he met a young woman from California, long brown hair, with a part in the middle, white, pertinent to the story. I'm not being racist or anything. And that was his, like, first girlfriend. Now, she's from a super wealthy family, super classy, just super self-confident, super smart. Everything he wanted in a future wife.
Okay.
Falls madly in love with her.
What's her name?
Diane, but in books, she uses the pseudonym Stephanie.
Stephanie?
Yeah. Because, you know, there's so much negativity surrounding this case that she didn't want to put her real name out there, so everybody called her Stephanie, but her real name is Diane, which I found out from the documentary. But if you just Google it, it comes up as Stephanie, and so I was like, oh my gosh, right? Yeah. So They start dating, and they date all 4 years of undergrad. Now, this is when he kind of decides he wants to be a politician. He loves, like, the idea of it because it's like a facade that you put on. It's not really you. And so he starts working for the Republican, like, party under candidates in Washington and Seattle. He starts doing all of these things. Everybody thought, even, like, the governor at the time thought that this guy is going to grow up and be a fine young man. Someone who's going to have an amazing career in politics, right?
Yeah.
So he goes, you know what? The only thing that's going to make me a better politician is to become an attorney. So he applies, he takes his LSATs and applies to a bunch of law schools. Now here's the problem. He was not as smart as he thought he was because his LSATs were mediocre at best, and he got admitted into a law school that's not really. So what he wanted, because he wants to be part of the upper class, he wants like law school, like Cornell, Yale, like the mahogany wood, old libraries that just scream money, you know?
Yeah.
But he got into a regular schmegular one with regular like LED light classrooms.
LED light?
You know what I mean? Like he just wasn't loving it.
Okay.
So after about a month, he stops attending classes. And he starts killing people instead.
Wait, what? Wait, he went to college and started to kill people?
Law school, yeah. I kid you not.
Okay, could you tell me a little more?
It's sticking to the roof of my mouth, that's why. So, he doesn't like his law school. His relationship, his girlfriend, Diane or Stephanie, Diane, or Stephanie, whatever you want to call her real name's Diane, right? Diane was falling apart because, like, he can't really give her what she wants. Like, she's used to, like, people taking her out on these fancy restaurant dates, buying her clothes, being smart, being sophisticated, you know, like...
Yeah.
She's used to that.
Yeah.
And he felt super insecure that he couldn't give that to her. He barely had money. His law school sucked, in his opinion. So they kind of broke up, and he started sneaking into girls' rooms.
Yeah.
And beating them.
What?
Random girls. It was never girls he knew.
But at that, did he get caught?
So, the first one was an assault. The first one on record was an assault. She didn't end up dying, but he bloodied her up, and she still has permanent, like, disabilities because of it. She was in college. The next two girls actually disappeared. And he kidnapped them from, like, a sorority. No, one of them was a newscaster who was in college, the same college. And then the next one was a sorority girl. She was leaving her sorority's house, and he took her in an alley. Both murdered. Horribly beaten and assaulted before murdered. It gets worse.
But all that just because the girlfriend broke up with him? And he's not happy with... It was
probably in him before. But you want to know why I said his first girlfriend is pertinent?
Why?
They all look the same.
Oh, so he wants a revenge.
From the beginning to the end, they're all white young women, usually in college, with long brown hair parted in the middle. All very attractive.
But why didn't he revenge the actual girlfriend?
I don't know.
Maybe he still loves her?
Yeah. The crazy thing is, during all of this, he had a lot of healthy relationships. That's weird too, right?
And those relationships look like her too?
No, they don't really look like her too much, but he had a lot of healthy ones, meaning nothing bad happened. He didn't hurt them. They thought he was normal. They actually really liked him. He thought about marrying some of them. Like, they didn't suspect much. While he was killing people on the side.
Yeah, he's something else.
But this is just the beginning. So then this is a little bit weird. So then people start freaking out because this is on University of Washington campus, which is known to be a pretty safe area. I actually have some fanny packers who are going to go there. What's good? What's poppin'? You know who you are, Biz, right? So it's scary. Everybody's freaking shook. And, like, the people who disappeared, they weren't out and drunk. Not that this is a reason, but they weren't out and drunk at 5 in the morning, like, asking for trouble in a city, right?
Yeah.
They were on campus, sober as like 11 p.m. Like, this is campus where there's so many students running around. Yeah. How did this happen? How did they just disappear and nobody saw anything? Well, turns out there was a witness who saw something. And they said it was a man in a cast he had an arm cast, and in the alley he asked, hey, I'm so sorry, could you help me load my car with this, like all my textbooks or whatever, like my arm recently broke and I can't do it. And that was the last of the girl that was seen from the sorority house.
Was it Ted? It was.
And then it gets worse. So you think this is ballsy, right? How do you have the balls to do that, Ted?
Yeah.
I feel like he gets off on like ballsiness because
Yeah.
it gets even crazier. There was this huge beach party for the entire town in Seattle, or like a couple miles out of Seattle. They said it reported like 40,000 people showed up.
Okay.
Like it was a giant thing, right? 2 girls go missing by the end of day. They weren't there alone. They were there with big groups of friends. How did they go missing?
Wow.
Nobody could really see anything. Nobody really remembered much. Except a couple of girls. They said that they remember walking by a guy in a brownish Beetle. And they saw that the girl, let's call her Lisa. Lisa was saying, oh, hi, I'm Lisa. And he had an arm sling and he goes, hi, I'm Ted. And he had a little bit of an accent. And she was helping him load something into his car because his arm was broken.
So he's always doing that, like.
So that's how they got the name Ted. The vehicle.
And he's actually giving them real names too. Like, the guy is just.
Ballsy.
Yeah, he's. Very interesting.
So then. Really good. And then this is where it gets crazy. The police released the name, and they also released the sketch. Now, they don't know if this is a fake name. Like you said, the police are like, we don't know. Maybe Ted, maybe he'll keep the same fake name. So if you ever get introduced to a Ted, you better run, right? Because it's not usual for people to change their name every time because it's hard to remember. So then he is like, okay, everybody release this. And they get a call from an ex-girlfriend of Ted Bundy's by the name of Elizabeth. And she calls and she says, listen, I really do feel like this is my ex-boyfriend. I mean, I do remember, because with the police explanation of he was in a cast, she goes, I remember seeing like crutches in his apartment when we were dating. And I never had an answer to it because I'd be like, hey, did you recently break your leg? And he'd be like, no.
Wait, he was pretending?
So he pretends to have broken, like, so that these women
so
will be like,
smart. Yeah, because a woman wants to help.
Yeah, and then it's like a reason, because why would you help like a regular guy? You're like, no, you seem threatening. But if a guy is like broken, then you're like, oh, poor guy, let me help you.
Yeah, especially if he's good looking, kind, and then he has a broken leg.
So she calls into the tip line for the police and says, I remember seeing crutches and being like, that's weird. And then he didn't really have an explanation. I feel like he might be the suspect, right? Now, at this time, the police were getting about 200 tips a day. That's a lot for weeks. And it costs money and time to go after every tip. And also, if you're going after every tip, then your manpower is released for this guy to commit more crimes. And so they look up Ted Bundy's history. No criminal record. Law student? Okay, probably just a crazy ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know?
That's
she seems
crazy.
paranoid.
Do you know what year are these all happened?
In the 70s?
50 years ago.
And then the crazier part is, one of the girls who said that they saw Ted in the Beetle talking to the other girl at the beach who went missing, they did a police lineup with Ted Bundy, and she did not identify him. So this to the police was, first of all, no criminal record, law student, not identified in a lineup. Why are we even wasting our time?
So he was that close.
Yes.
From being caught.
Constantly close. And then let's get this. He decides, you know what? They're finding bodies left and right in Seattle. I gotta get out of here, okay? So then he decides to apply for law school in Salt Lake City near Utah. Or in Utah, okay? Stephanie, I'm so smart. So then he goes all the way to Utah, probably killing people on his way. And then once he gets to Utah, you would think, maybe he's gonna start fresh. Maybe he's gonna be a Utahn, and by the way, I learned that from you guys, and be a good person. Wrong. Wrong! So then he decides, I'm just going to use this chance. Also, I feel like it has something to do with his insecurities because the first law school he went to, he felt like it was a shitty one. The second one, the law school in Utah, he felt like all the students knew so much more than him because they were probably studying them in the free time instead of killing people in their free time, you know? So he felt behind. He felt less superior to these kids that were in his law school. So he decides to stop going to classes again and just start killing, okay? What am I good at? Maybe killing, right? So then he starts killing. Now, the first time was a really ballsy one, and he actually did not succeed. This is part of his demise as a human being. He tries to kidnap a girl, 18 years old, at a busy mall. And the way that he tries to do this is he comes up dressed as a police officer and says, hey, my name is Officer Roseland, and I just saw someone trying to break into your car in the parking lot.
Well dressed in a police. That's so...
And then she says, what? And he goes, yeah. You should probably file a police report just to make sure, you know?
And did she say she doesn't have a car?
No.
Oh.
Could you imagine, though? I'm sorry, what? So then she's like, oh, okay. So then he's like, all right, right this way. And she gets into his car because they're going to drive to the police station, which was not a police car, but anyways, we're not judging. So she's driving, or he's driving, and she's in the passenger seat. And she realizes, I know where the police station is, and we are not on the road headed to the police station.
Yeah.
So she starts freaking out, and she goes, why aren't we on that road, right?
Yeah.
And he starts realizing, oh man, it looks like we got a runner. So he immediately pulls over and tries to handcuff her. Now she's fighting him off. So as she's fighting him off, I mean, I keep going back and forth. Is he smart? Is he stupid? He handcuffs the same arm twice. So it's just instead of So then she's like, okay, and then opens the door and runs away. But she knows what he looks like, what car he's driving, and what he tried to do. Now that same day, a 17-year-old girl goes missing from a theater that she was with like a bunch of people. The only thing found at the back of that theater was a tiny little handcuff key, which the police said, wait. So then they grabbed it, and unlocked her handcuffs. So they knew it was the same person. So they were like, okay. Let's see. Right?
What the hell? He should be done.
Right? So then they have all of these reports being held at Utah. Now, Seattle is a far ways from Utah, and they're trying to communicate. It might be the same person, but they don't really know for sure because there's really no MO at this point. There's not one thing other than it happens to be young women. But I mean, young women usually are the target of everybody. That's a serial killer, technically. They have him on watch. They said they're communicating with the Seattle police. They're like, this might be Ted Bundy. He's in Utah now. Now you guys are getting weird murders over there. This is his car. This is what he's doing. So the police have a watch on him. They didn't bring him in for questioning because, I mean, there's no proof. So if they bring him for questioning, it's almost like you might make them smarter.
I think that key is a...
But it's no proof that it's his. And this girl, it's her word, right?
Okay.
So they're like, okay, that's very, very interesting. So then one day, an officer is driving around when he sees a Volkswagen driving all weird, very, very slowly in a suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
Almost as if it's like looking for someone. So then that officer pulls over the car because it's the car of interest, which is a Beetle. And then it's Ted Bundy inside.
The cop already knew.
Yeah. The weirdest part was the passenger seat was taken out and put in the back. So, like, there was no seat in the front. So he's like, why do you not have a seat in the front, you know? Checked his trunk. Ski masks.
Oh, man.
Blunt force objects. But no illegal weapons. These are all things you can buy at REI or Dick's Sporting Goods. They're all household. A bat. You know, these are all things anyone can buy. Yeah. So they can't arrest him. But they let him go. But they were watching him very closely. He was under like 24-hour surveillance.
He must knew this, huh?
The way that they arrested him was he decided he was going to sell the Beetle. He was like, I did too much bad stuff in here. People are looking for this color. Let's sell the beetle. Sold the beetle. The police tracked down who he sold it to. Did a complete search. Found a couple of hairs that belonged to a couple different women.
There you go.
So they arrested him. And on top of that, the girl from the mall, Officer Roseland, she finally identified him in a lineup. So he was taken to court, right?
That's it, no? He was released? Oh my god, how can you?
Twice.
Twice?
Yeah. So the first time he actually escaped because he decided he was going to represent himself. So he went to court in Utah. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He decided that court, the way that it works, it's judge and then the two people trying the case, right? He's like, listen, I'm going to be my own attorney because nobody else is standing up for me the way that they should be. So then the judge allowed it, which means he can't be his attorney in handcuffs because then the jury is going to be swayed. Like, you're preaching while you're in handcuffs, no one's going to believe you.
Yeah.
So it's not a fair trial. So the judge said, okay, you can take off your handcuffs for this trial and wear like a suit or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, thank you very much. Now, during recess time, he has escorts, like police escorts, to make sure he doesn't try to do something funky. He's like, can you guys take me to the courthouse library because I want to do some more research on my case? So they said, okay. They take him to the library. He jumps out the second-story window, breaks his ankle on the way, breaks into a bunch of cabins, and it's cold over there. It's like snowing at this point. Breaks into a bunch of cabins, steals a bunch of cars, and he's gone for a total of 6 days. And he makes it back to the city, and he gets pulled over because he was swerving too many lanes. Okay, so they pulled this car over because he was like driving like this. And then it's Ted Bundy, the fugitive, on the run. So they arrested him again.
And now, what was the point of that? Right? So what's the point? He escaped?
Yeah, so now he's back in court, right?
Yeah.
And they're deciding if he's guilty or not. Now, his friends and his family are telling him, listen, don't try to do anything stupid again. Because here's the thing. The court is throwing out evidence against you. It almost looks like if you sit still, you hire an attorney, and you do good, you're barely going to spend time in jail for murder. Because the court is like, nope, this is not usable evidence. Nope, this seems biased. They're just doing, it's literally making Ted Bundy look better and better and better. So a normal person who hears that from his friends and family is going to be like, you are right. You know, I am being framed. You are right. No, he's sitting in jail waiting for more of his court dates, and he decides to hacksaw a hole through his cell. I don't know how he did it. Squeeze through it, break into a jail on Christmas Day.
Break into a what?
A jail staff's room and take their clothes and walk out the front door.
No.
Ted Bundy walked out that jail. He literally walked out that jail. And this time, he was gone for a lot longer than 6 days. He made his way all the way to Florida because he was executed in Florida. So you're probably wondering, how the hell did you end up in Florida? He made his way to Florida. And everybody says his plan was, and I think that they got this from him, the problem with him is that he changed his story a lot when he was in jail. So like sometimes he would play the really creepy part where he would even talk about how after he killed women, he would apply their makeup and shampoo their hair, their dead bodies, because he felt like it was therapeutic for him. And then sometimes he'd be like, what murders? What are we talking about here? I don't know what you're saying. So a lot of people are confused. But what people are saying is that he wanted to go to Florida, get a good job, and never commit crimes. And he probably would have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
He probably would be living his life in Florida to this day, maybe sunbathing in Miami.
Yeah. But
the problem is he couldn't get a real job because he had no ID. And he was like on America's top 10 most wanted. So you can't get a freaking construction job or any job, which is what he was applying for.
Yeah.
So then he goes back to what he used to do when he was younger, which is stealing wallets out of girls' purses in shopping carts of grocery stores. Because you know how women leave it on where the babies sit? They leave their purses, so he would go and steal the wallets, which is why I never leave my purse there, because I'm too smart for the Ted Bundys out there. So then you get it. So then so then in that stress of he can't pay rent, he can't afford food, he's not used to living like this, he decides to break into a sorority house in Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, I believe, to be exact, and kill 2 girls in their sleep. And then Once he was done killing those 2 girls, he went into the next door room and was in the process of killing 2 girls, but I guess they were screaming, they weren't putting up with it. They're alive, but they have a lot of permanent disabilities.
Oh my god.
And this was in a house full of sorority girls, and nobody really heard much. And this took place in 15 minutes. He did all of that damage in 15 minutes.
Yeah, so after all that killing, he's...
Yeah. So then he leaves the sorority house.
He didn't kill the 2 girls. He just
killed
left.
2, and then 2 were heavily...
Fighting back?
I don't know if it's because they were fighting back or what the circumstances were, but they're alive, but they have a lot of lasting injuries.
Mm-hmm. So he left.
Mm-hmm. Decided to break into another girl's apartment. Tried to kill her.
Same night?
Mm-hmm. Right after this.
What?
Mm-hmm. Tried to kill her. Didn't end up happening. She still has lasting injuries. And then he was on the run. Now, he's running when a cop realizes, I think that's Ted Bundy. Why is he running, right? And they get into a fight. At one point, they're even fighting for the officer's gun.
Yeah.
Like, it got knocked out of his hand, like the movie scenes, right?
Yeah.
The officer gets it, handcuffs him, arrests him. And on their way to jail, he says, I wish you would have just killed me, to the officer. Because he knows it ain't gonna be good now, right?
Yeah.
Because honestly, if he had stayed, a lot of people are speculating, like at the justice system at the time, if he had just stayed put and not escaped from prison, he probably would have been voluntarily let out of prison because the case was not that strong at that point. But now in Florida, I mean, it's pretty damn strong, dude. You're not gonna get out of this one.
Yeah.
So case after case, death penalty after death penalty. He admitted to like 30 freaking deaths, but people suspect a lot more.
Yeah.
And he was finally executed after being on death row in the state of Florida.
Wow, that police is a hero.
Yeah, people love that police. People love him and the first one that pulled him over in Utah. Even though he couldn't arrest him, at least it put more eyes on him.
Yeah.
You know what's even crazier? His ex-girlfriend called Utah police, and I think she even called, she called Utah police twice. His ex-girlfriend called 3 different police stations saying, I think it's my ex-boyfriend, Ted Bundy.
You're talking about the very first?
Yeah, and nobody really listened to her. They kind of listened to her at the end, but still, she was very, very adamant on, hi guys, it's my ex-boyfriend killing everybody. That's it for today's video. Please make sure I upload tomorrow. If I don't, call a friend. Oh, and then when he was executed, there was 2,000 people outside and celebrating. They threw a party. And then some people thought a lot of people had mixed feelings about this party. Some people thought it was sad that he was electrocuted because it's too easy of a way to go, they said, for a monster like him. The second group of people were just happy that he was gone. The third group of people saw the happy people and were sad because, like, wow, humans. I mean, it's still a human in there, and look at all these humans celebrating. And then some people were like, I mean, I was sad, but it was more scary than anything that someone died.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How do you guys feel about that one? Would you be partying with a pina colada outside, or would you be like, this is weird, glad it's over?
I wouldn't party, but
I wouldn't party, but I wouldn't be sad. Yeah, I wouldn't sit around and be like, that's sad. I'd be like,
yeah, thank God. Like, you'll feel a little safer going out, right?
Yeah. That's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys want to see my last personal meal that I would personally consume if I was on death row, let me know in the... Well, do I have to be on death row?
Sounds really
Can
bad.
I just say my last meal, period, in general?
If my mom heard you say this...
My mom too.
God.
My mom's going to call me she's the type that'll think if I say my last meal and then eat it, that will be my last meal and I'll die the next day or something. Yeah. So.
Yeah, even when I say like, oh man, what if like my hair fall out? And she's like, what are you saying?
Why would you say that?
Why would you say such a thing? Oh my God.
Oh my God, that's gonna be it for today's video. I love you guys so much. Leave it in the comments what you guys think about this case, and I love you guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully, just make sure you see me tomorrow because that is really stressing me out. Bye.